Welcome, my horror-loving fiends, to another edition of the Horror Tour Guide podcast. And I'm sitting here with my new my new guest. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from.
Hi, this is Carl Paolino, and I am from New York City.
What do you do for a living?
I do a lot of things. I'm a published author, and I also teach with School of Visual Arts.
What do you teach?
Well, there's one particular class I think your listeners would be interested in. It's creating makeup special effects for film and television.
How did you get involved in special effects makeup?
Oh, that's a very long story. It begins at the dawn of time as a child watching horror films and thinking that I can recreate everything I see, everything from monsters to zombies to aliens, just about everything. So you end up going to college, which is what I did. I went to School of Visual Arts. I'm a graduate. A million years ago. From there, I started a career in film production, eventually led me to animation. Back in the day, we couldn't look things up on YouTube. We had to figure things out for ourselves, what materials to use, how to create sculptures, molds, life casting.
Tell me some of your greatest accomplishments with your animation and artwork.
Here's a show that someone might remember, some of your older listeners. Celebrity Deathmatch back in the 1990s was one of the biggest shows on MTV. I was instrumental in helping the show get off the ground. Eventually, we created hundreds of stop-motion animation puppets for the show, where characters like the Spice Girls were created in stop-motion animation form, and they would fight to the death with Hanson, if anybody remembers them.
How did you get involved in starting to work for animation? What was your first big break into the industry?
It was a little by little. I mean, back in the days, we would send our reels around to advertising agencies showing the kind of work we can do. You know, this is all pre-digital. So what we would do is we would have everything on our reel. We would have everything from our design work to sculptures to animation puppets, just a little bit of everything. And, you know, by word of mouth, a reputation grows. And we found ourselves working for Nickelodeon, and I've done work for Disney, and I've done work for a lot of work for MTV. So I don't know if it was a big break, but it was little by little you build a reputation and people start coming to you for various things.
Can you tell me about some of your most memorable horror projects?
Oh, sure. We did I guess you could call it a promotional for AMC, which used to be called American Movie Classics. Every Halloween they used to do something to do with monsters and zombies, and they'd show a lot of old horror films. And what we were asked to do was create a monster march across the Brooklyn Bridge. So I put together a crew of about 10 people, and we had to make about 100 monsters over just a few hours, which were actors, of course, wearing makeup, looking like zombies. There was a couple of Frankensteins, a couple of Draculas, a couple of werewolf people. For the most part, it was zombies. We made up probably close to 100 actors who all met at the Brooklyn Bridge eventually at about 9 a.m., and they marched across. That was a lot of fun.
Just rewinding back a little bit about your teaching at the School of Visual Arts, is this the only place where you teach? And if so, how long have you been with the School of Visual Arts as an instructor?
School of Visual Arts right now is the only place that I am teaching. And I teach undergrad classes in stop motion animation. Also in fine arts. We do a lot of body casting, which is pretty much what it sounds like. We're making molds of people, usually students. And I've been with the school now for about 16 years. For continuing education, if there's any of your listeners interested in taking a class in creating silicone prosthetics for anything, for fun, for Halloween, to learn professional techniques, we teach a class in continuing education in silicone prosthetics.
And take it from me, guys, this man is the real deal. I also was taught by him. Pretty proud to say that. Carl's the best.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process in puppet making for animation? You don't have to go into too much detail, but what's the process like to create a stop motion film with puppetry and stuff from start to finish? How long is the process in total, and how large of a crew do you need to accomplish this goal?
There's a lot there to really discuss. As a point of reference, what I'm going to suggest, if anyone is interested in the stop motion techniques, they may want to go on YouTube, and what you can see is my latest short film. It's called The Halloween Pranksta, Pranksta, Pranksta. and it's an animated short. It's made for children, but it's got horror elements to it. So it's the kind of thing I would have loved to see when I was 7 years old. So I eventually got around to making one. And my co-producer on the project was Mark Hamill, who you may recognize from Star Wars, and also, in my opinion, the best voice of the Joker ever from the Batman animated series. Stop motion animation gets very involved, but the process in general is, designing a character, which is usually two-dimensional illustration, and we build wire armatures that can be articulated to bend in the proper spaces, meaning like elbows and knees, and we would add clay to this to sculpt a character. From there, we create multiple piece plaster molds from that clay sculpture. When the mold comes apart, you take out the clay, you remove it from the armature, the metal armature, which is flexible, goes back into the mold, and lately we've been casting characters in silicone. So by injecting silicone into the mold, the finished puppet is a flexible silicone puppet with a wire armature inside, so it can hold a position, and using any number of programs, you can shoot it a frame at a time and create your own little movies. Creating puppets and miniature sets probably takes the largest amount of time. Most people think animating puppets takes the most amount of time, but it really doesn't, depending on how many puppets you're actually animating. You would move the puppet a tiny bit, and you would take a frame or two of film, or we don't use film anymore, but whatever the equivalent is in digital. And then eventually, when you play it back, the puppet comes alive, and it walks around, and it does what it needs to do. The better you are trained as an animator, understanding the principles of animation, which is how cycles work, and how to lift things and make the puppet appear to be lifting something that's very heavy, when in fact just about everything you're working with is extremely lightweight. That's something that really needs to be explored. And there's plenty of animation to watch on YouTube. I mean, back in the day when I learned, it was a lot of trial and error, and we were actually shooting on film. So the biggest problem we had was we would shoot film, and then we'd take the film out of the camera, we'd send it off, and weeks later we'd come back and we would project it and find out, maybe we didn't take the lens cap off and we didn't record anything. It was a big waste of time, big waste of money, but it was a learning process. And hopefully from those hard lessons, you start to understand the principles of animation a lot better.
Sounds tedious, but when you see the end result, it's totally worth it. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your films?
I do have a horror feature, and I'm going to be approaching some distributors very soon. It was shot a couple of years back, but I think it's the right time to actually get it distributed. It's called The Sickness. It's a live-action feature. It's not animated, and it's about 5 people trapped in an underground facility. And the viruses that they are there to culture, they get out, and, well, bad things happen. I mean, it's a horror film, right? That's what's supposed to happen.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of your upcoming projects or anything that you're currently working on now?
Too many to list, but I'll tell you this. I am getting ready for a big pitch to a number of networks. Some of them are going to be streaming, because the online platform has opened up a whole new world for a lot of people in the industry. I think it's a fantastic format. I mean, look what we're doing right now, and there's no real way of knowing how many people are going to listen or watch, but it's a whole new platform that I think is wonderful. I do watch a lot of Netflix. I love Netflix. Recently, in the last so many years, handful of years, started publishing, and I have a new horror series called Virgin Falls. I am completing the 3rd book in the series now, and I introduce a character I'm calling the Woodsman. It's a scary character that lives out in the woods. So the first book in the series is called Vacation Ever. It is a little tongue-in-cheek, and there's some adventure, but make no mistake about it, you don't want to end up in the woods with the woodsman out there. 5 people go on vacation in the woods, and the monster just won't let them go home. So it's an ongoing adventure, and I'm finishing the 3rd book now, plotting out the 4th book.
It was great having you on my show, Carl. But I need to cut you off now.
You need to say goodbye. I'm getting hungry.
Yeah!